and welcome back to another chapter of It Hurts to Hope by Inquilidori on AO3. Chapter 17, Spilling the Tea. Zelka is pretty sure he's dead. How else can he explain that his heart has mysteriously stopped beating and his breath has died in his throat? Then he realized that he's very much alive and in danger of suffocating if he doesn't keep breathing. And he draws in as much air into his lungs as he can manage. Grian? The woman repeats, and he wants to cry. She sounds so scared, so hesitant, like he's a ghost that will disappear at any moment if she looks at him for too long. It's you, right? I don't know, he says, because it's the only truthful thing he can say. Mumbo and Exuma are watching them with no small amount of confusion, though Zelka could see the admin's face to tell if it's mirrors. Can't see the admin's face to tell if it mirrors Momo's expression of bafflement. But I know you. Please, He cuts off, unsure how to finish that sentence. The woman seems to realize something, because her eyes go wide, and she glances over Exuma. Memory loss, she murmurs, then turns back to Zelka. You go by Zelka right now, right? Is that what I should call you? She sounds so upset at the idea of having to call him that. But he manages a shaky nod. Because really, right now, he can't handle thinking about the other name. The name that practically glows and wraps around his heart in such a right way. He wants her to say it 1,000 times. He wants to speak it aloud and hear how it sounds. But he can't start thinking that, because he can already feel himself starting to spiral, and he can't lose his grip right now. Not when he's so close to her. So close to figuring out at least one part of this convoluted puzzle. Yeah, he says hoarsely. Zelka is okay, please. All right, the woman says, and she drags a hard hand through her hair, avoiding the delicate antennae that twist around in agitation. My name is... I'm Pearl. Pearlescent Moon. Pearl. And suddenly Zelka feels absolutely ecstatic, because that name slots into place in his mind even more comfortably than Grian, a name that comes with half memories of flying and teasing and singing. You're my sister, he blurts before he can stop himself, and Pearl's hands fly to her mouth, a strangled sob coming out as she nods. She seems both elated and wary, overjoyed to see him, yet uncertain how to act. Zelka decides for her. He lunges across the room and throws himself into her arms, almost bowling her over before she sticks out a foot for balance, and immediately, desperately, returns the embrace. Oh my god, I thought I lost you. I never stopped looking for you. Pearl's desperate whispers are muffled as she buries her face in Zelka's hair, pulling him close with her wings, folding out around them like they can protect them both. I never stopped, I promise. They said you were dead, but I knew you weren't. I didn't move on. I swear on the moon, I'd never forget you. Never forgot you. Well, at least that makes one of them. Zelka simply chirps something vaguely comforting, and buries his face in her shoulder, breathing in the smell of moon and void and jasmine. Hugs from Mumbo and Scar are wonderful things, but this is something completely different, because here he feels safe and home, and this is family. How did he forget? Someone clears their throat beyond their tangle of limbs and wings, and Zelka peers over Pearl's shoulder to see Mumbo and Exuma standing at a respectful distance, waiting patiently for them to separate. "I'm overjoyed to see you reunite," Exuma states, and there's nothing but fondness in his tone. "But perhaps we should sit down and you can fill us in, Pearl." "Oh, yeah, of course." Pearl gently untangles her arms from Zelqua's, and he makes an accidental, needy trill at the loss of contact. He immediately flushes, embarrassed, but Pearl simply laughs and swings an arm around his shoulders, avoiding his wings as naturally as she has done it 1,000 times before. She probably has. Zelqua doesn't even want to think about what that means. So he lets himself be led over to the couches and armchairs, gathering around the small coffee table. Pearl refuses to leave Zelqua's side, a sentiment he completely agrees with. So they settle down on the couch together, close enough for their shoulders to brush. "So, I think we should start with the obvious," Exuma starts, placing his fingers together, which is that, "Pearl, you know Zelqua?" "I do," Pearl confirms, and there's so much relief in her voice that it almost bowls Zelqua over. "I've been looking for him for, gods, it's been years. Many, very long years." Zelqua looks over her again, and this time picks out details he didn't notice the first time around. The circles around her eyes, her swallow skin, the almost unnoticeable specks of void dust that gathered across her face and hands. "Right, so you knew him before the Watchers?" Exuma asks carefully. And Pearl hesitates, glancing over at Zelqua. She seems to be asking him for permission with her eyes alone, and he doesn't even pause before nodding. She turns back to Exuma. "I did. We were on the same server along with a bunch of our other friends. We called it Evolution. Evo for short." Zelqua was, well, he was the admin." Everyone except for Pearl immediately stiffens in shock and surprise. Zelqua physically jerking back like he's been burned. "An admin? Him? How is that even possible?" "I was an admin?" he asks, and Pearl nods. "And a damn good one," she says with a weird twist of her lips. Evo was programmed to process through the updates as time went on, starting from one of the oldest, and only a real good admin could have handled something like that. We always offered to help, or bring in someone else who would be able to shoulder some of the admin duties. But were pretty gosh darn stubborn. "I'll do it myself, or not at all," you told us. I was so proud. Zelqua has no idea what to say to that. He's already struggling to wrap his head around Pearl and his old name. Don't think about the old name right now. And now on top of all that, he was an admin? "Alright, let's move on," Exuma suggests, probably noticing that Zelqua is 3 steps away from a panic attack. "Pearl, what happened to Evo?" "You're referring to it in past tense." Pearl's shoulders go rigid, and it's only because Zelqua is so close that he even notices it. She stares into the coffee table for a moment, eyes flashing with emotions too quick to make out. "The Watchers happened," she finally murmurs, and Zelqua feels a cold pang of fear crawl down his spine. "It seemed fine at first, was the thing. They were merely curious about us. They enjoyed setting traps and puzzles for us to solve. Zelqua was the one who resisted the most, really. His stubborn side couldn't give it a rest even when pitted against demigods. And so time went on, and the stakes got higher, obsidian over our chests, harder assignments. We were starting to get worried, but Zelqua assured us everything was fine. That he still had admin commands and could get us out at the first sign of trouble. We went into the end fight with full confidence that we'd see each other on the other side of the portal. But the Watchers messed with that as well. Pearl closes her eyes for a long moment, drawing in a shaky breath. Zelqua shifts a bit closer to her, bumping his shoulder against hers in a silent support. She opens her eyes to give him a little smile before continuing, voice heavy with the grief of events that happened a long time ago. They separated us somehow. Each player sent to their own end, their own fight. It wasn't that big of a deal, we were all pretty good fighters. We managed to defeat our dragons, and we stepped into the portal hoping that the others would be safe on the other side. Zelqua fists his shaking hands in his lap, suddenly acutely aware of where this is going. Part of him wants to tell her to stop, wants to run from the room and take flight, fly away and away from the story. His story. But he stays silent, because he knows how it will end. We all made it out except for Zelqua. We all came back except our admin. I've been looking for him ever since. It's a heavy kind of silence that descends on the room. No one is sure what to say, least of all Zelqua. He feels like his mind is spinning too fast to grasp at any rational thoughts. And if he tries to say anything now, he knows it'll come out either as a cry or unintelligible rambling. So we can assume that was when the Watchers took him and changed him. Zelqua murmurs. Exuma murmurs, which means, Zel, that you've been with them for several years. Zelqua breathes, and it's the first thing he's managed to say since they sat down. That seems about right. Time was hard with the Watchers, but he'd done his best to keep track, and the years lined up in his head. With the time he spent there, it's rather horrifying, really. The thought that he'd been trapped there with them for so long. Mumbo's hands grasp his in a silent comfort, and he manages to give his friend a weak smile. Mumbo doesn't return it, and instead turns to Pearl with a dark look in his eyes. Why did they do it then? He asks, and there's definitely something threatening in his voice. Not towards Pearl, but towards the third party that they're discussing. Zelqua's pretty sure he's never seen Mumbo this mad before. Why did they take Zel and turn him? You said you've been researching Watchers ever since Evo's fall, Exuma says, more calmly than Mumbo. Have any of your journeys revealed why they would take a player and turn him into one of them? Pearl nods, slowly, and fixes her gaze on the table again. Zelqua can almost hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to word her next statement. Apparently she decides that diplomacy is a waste, because her next statement is so blunt you could smash a wall of bricks with it. The Watchers are dying. Zelqua stiffens, and he sees Exuma do the same. Mumbo gently squeezes Zel's hand and doesn't say anything. Watchers are immortal, Exuma says carefully, like he wants to make sure Pearl knows that, but doesn't want to insult her. They can't die. Well, they can now. Pearl leans back against the couch and crosses her arms. Every source I've found says the exact same thing. Something's killing the Watchers, and they're desperate to survive. They're a dying race, and it's only a matter of time before they go extinct. Zelka lets out a shaky breath and drags his free hand down to his face. It's not that he's upset, exactly. He'd gladly never lay eyes on another Watcher, and never hear the name again. But he doesn't want them to die. Do you? Okay, I do realize I'm a bit of a swoon, but I'll admit, I don't see what this has to do with Zell, Mumbo says, glancing between Exuma and Pearl. So the Watchers are dying. Great! But why would they? Pearl nods grimly as the realization hits Mumbo, and his mouth falls open in a little O of surprise. They're trying to create more Watchers, Pearl says, and the shudder runs through Zelqua as he feels all the pieces finally fall into place. Zelqua was most likely a test run to see if it was possible to turn players into Watchers. If it worked, they would have found a way to keep their race from dying out. Well, obviously it worked, Mobo says, gesturing with a hand to Zelqua, very obviously no longer human. He opens his mouth to say something else, but quiet words cut him off, bringing silence just as effectively as a shout. Not quite. Everyone turns as one to look at Zelqua, who pointedly fixes his gaze on his hands. His wings press closer against his spine, and he can almost feel his eyes squeeze tighter shut in an effort to be forgotten. Mate, you're going to have to clarify a little, Mumbo says carefully, and Zelqua nods, and then shakes his head, and then nods again. He lets out a choked laugh that has no mirth behind it. Yeah, I guess I do, he says quietly, and buries his face in his hands, the blindness giving him the courage to speak again. Can someone message Scar? I'd like for him to be here. He hears Zelqua click open his admin panel. Now he knows why they're so familiar. And Mumbo makes a confused noise. X is already on it, but what for? Zelqua sighs again and smiles, a little expression of acceptance that no one can see behind his hands. I think it's about time I tell you my story, he whispers. The part I can remember anyways. And that feels like the bravest thing he could possibly do. Ever since he's come onto Hermitcraft, he's refused to tell anyone about what he went through. Though the context clues have been enough for most of the hermits. But he's come to the conclusion that he trusts these people. He wants them to know his story. Wants them to see just how broken and confusing and shattered he is. He wants to know if they'll accept him like they said they would. A moment of silence rings out after that admittance. I'm telling Scar to bring jelly, Exuma says, and that is the wisest thing Zelqua has heard all day. I understand that you would only want your most trusted friends here, Zelqua, so I can leave if it will make you feel more comfortable. Shut up, Exuma. You're staying. Zelqua interrupts, and even he's surprised with the assuredness in his voice. But it's true. He wants the people he trusts the most here. And somehow, somewhere, Exuma has become someone he trusts. They wait in silence until Scar arrives, who wordlessly sits down in the armchair next to Mumbo and passes over jelly. He's unusually serious, and Zelqua figures that Exuma informed him why he was asked to come. So, Zelqua starts, and then realizes that he has no idea where to start. He falls silent again, mouth opening and closing a few times before laughing awkwardly. Wow, I don't even know where to begin. Take your time, Scar says gently, and Zelko manages a weak smile, tangling his fingers in Jelly's fur. Somehow the touch helps ground him, and he takes a deep breath. I'm not a full watcher, he whispers, words hesitant and voice halting. I'm something of a half-baked horror, really. A watcher as much as I am human. The transformation didn't work the way they wanted it to, and I came out too weak to be a god, but too strong to be a player. I was stuck perfectly in between. I suppose that's why it was so easy for me to get stuck here. I couldn't hold out in the void for very long, and I have no energy to fight against a Voidwalker's code. I doubt I could have done anything to this world even if I wanted to. So, yeah, for the most part, the test was a failure. It didn't come out the way they wanted it to. I didn't come out the way they wanted me to. He takes a shaky breath, closes his eyes, and feels a small, regretful smile twitch at his lips. They tried to change me into a watcher anyways. If magic couldn't do it, perhaps discipline could. My memories were taken, my past wiped, my name changed. They were determined to make me into one of them, no matter what it took. They couldn't bear to think that their experiment had been a failure. They underestimated a player's spirit. The body might be easy to mold, to change and shape, but the soul is not so easily crushed. I lost my memories, but not my spunk. I was the biggest problem they could have had, and infuriated them. They simply couldn't comprehend how a simple mortal could dare defy them at every turn. And so Zelqua tells them. He tells his most trusted friends and rediscovered sister, how the Watchers tried to shape him into their image, and how he refused to let them. He tells them of dark nights in windowless rooms, a locked blindfold over his eyes so he was forced to use his eyes. Wings that took months to master and even longer to fly with, only when they let him. Tests upon tests upon tests, to see if he could breathe in the end, to see if he needed food, to determine if he required sleep. He was still human, in a way, so he still needed all those things. He suffocated in the void, he starved without food, he became delirious without sleep. It all hurt. His stomach cramping, and eyes weighing down with exhaustion, and mind screaming for silence. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make him stronger. They couldn't make him more godlike. They couldn't turn me into them. And that infuriated them. And the more furious they got, the harder they pushed. The harder they pushed, the more I resisted. We went in spiraling, hellish circles until I managed to slip out into the in-between. The one code weave they refused to teach me, and the one I had to learn for myself. I don't know how long I spent in the in-between, but it was long enough that I contemplated just giving in, letting the void take me. It seemed more forgiving than life. But then I found Hermitcraft, and you taught me how to live again, and I can never, ever thank you enough for that chance. He falls silent, and the silence is suffocating as the three hermits and one off-worlder struggle to wrap their minds around the tragedy that is his story. Finally laid out bare for them to pick apart and investigate. Zelko finds that it's suddenly hard to breathe, and he focuses on petting Jelly as he awaits the verdict of his friends. When did they become friends? When did his mind shift from afraid to content? When did he become a part of this wacky, insane family of builders and dreamers? He's not sure, but he finds that he's happy he did. He's glad they refused to let him go. He's overjoyed they accepted him. The Watchers chased him onto Hermitcraft, but the Hermits let him stay. It's the greatest thing anyone's ever done for him, and he truly doesn't have the words to express how grateful he is for that. There's an arm around his shoulders. It takes him a minute to realize that Scar has moved from his armchair and sat down on the couch instead. Embracing Zelqua in a slightly awkward half hug that smells of his usual cat hair and fresh grass. "Thank you, Zel," he says, and there's no mistaking the earnestness in his voice, even to Zelqua's paranoid mind. "Thank you for telling us. Thank you for trusting us." He doesn't really have anything to say to that, so he simply returns the hug and chirps happily. He feels Pearl's arm join in on his other side. The familiar weight of home, sister, family. Another pair of these ones, much lankier, joins in soon after, and the ever-present spice of Redstone hits Zelqua's senses. But there's one missing. There's a gap, somewhere between Scar and Mumbo, and Zelqua knows exactly who's supposed to fit in it. So he throws one wing over Scar's back, lifts his head to peer over someone's shoulder, and he fixes Exuma with a withering glare. "Get over here, X. Can't you see we're having a moment?" A startled laugh slips from the admin, but he obliges anyways and comes over. He's hesitant in joining in, but Zelqua doesn't wait and simply yanks him down into the pile of Hermit and Watcher and Offworlder. Someone's elbow buries itself in Zelqua's gut, and his wing hits Mumbo in the face, but none of them stop laughing. It feels amazing. It's a mix of limbs and wings and laughter. Pearl's soft jasmine perfume and Jelly's cat scent, and Mumbo's rich spices that never seem to wash out of his jacket. It's the same kind of familiarity Zelqua felt when he hugged Pearl. It's the same kind of safety he feels when Exuma promises that no Watcher will find them. It's the same kind of warmth the Scar brings with his ever-present smile and salesman tongue. It's the same kind of friendship he shares with Mumbo. Zelqua lets himself sink into the embrace and thinks that at long last, he's finally found a family again. And that's the end of chapter 17.